Facing a 3-bet, in position versus out of position. Position is the expected value lever. When you face a 3-bet, your decision is not about toughness, it is about equity realization, R. In position, your R is higher. Out of position, your R collapses, so your defense must tighten and your 4-bet construction changes. Your baseline in online pools should assume competent sizing, rake pressure, and multi-tabling tendencies. You must remove hope-based calls that bleed expected value. First, in position, you can call more suited and connected hands that realize equity post-flop. Second, out of position, you need more 4-bets and more folds. Calling becomes narrow and purpose-driven. Minimum defense frequency, MDF, is a guardrail, not a command. Use it to avoid folding too much versus aggressive regulars, then adjust using pool reads and tracking software. First, MDF rises when villain risks little to win your open. Second, MDF falls in high rake environments because marginal calls lose more expected value. TPP Exploit Framework. First, the exploit versus auto 3-betters defend closer to MDF in position. Versus under 3-betters overfold out of position and print. Second, the risk. Defending too wide in position becomes rake-dragged, especially with dominated offsuit hands. Third, the counter. If villain starts 3-betting larger and barreling more, tighten calls and shift expected value into 4-bets with better blockers and unblockers. Range geometry, linear versus polarized. Most 3-bet ranges are either linear or polarized ranges. Your defense must match the geometry. Linear 3-bets target your entire opening range. Polarized 3-bets target your fold region and avoid bloating pots with medium strength. First, linear tends to appear in the blinds versus late position opens. Second, polarized appears more in positions where calling is attractive, like button versus cutoff. Against linear or polarized ranges, your response changes. First, versus linear, you must defend medium strength more often. You deny equity and do not let villain print by 3-betting good hands. Second, versus polarized, you can 4-bet more aggressively with blockers and unblockers and call hands that play well post-flop. You also care about whether ranges are capped versus uncapped. If you call a 3-bet too much and 4-bet too little, you become capped and face pressure on many runouts. First, 4-betting keeps you more uncapped. Second, flatting too much out of position makes your range capped and defensively fragile. TPP Exploit Framework. First, the exploit versus linear blind. 3-betters defend with tighter offsuit and wider suited calls in position. Versus polarized 3-betters, add 4-bet bluffs with strong blockers. Second, the risk. Over 4-betting into linear ranges runs into too many continues and burns money. Third, the counter. If villain depolarizes and starts calling 4-bets, remove thin bluffs and shift into value-heavy 4-bets. In position, you can call more. In position, defense is built around high equity realization, R. You see turns and rivers more often, you control pot size, and you get cleaner value bets. That does not mean you call everything. In online pools, rake punishes dominated bluff catchers and non-functioning offsuit hands. First, strong in position calls are suited, connected, and not dominated. Second, weak in position calls are offsuit broadways that make second-best pairs. Baseline in position call buckets, facing a standard blind 3-bet. First, suited broadways, king-queen suited, queen-jack suited, jack-10 suited. Second, suited connectors, 10-9 suited, 9-8 suited, 8-7 suited. Third, pocket pairs, pocket 9s through pocket 4s, but only when stacks and sizing support it, not for hope-based set mining. Fourth, some suited ace-x, ace-5 suited through ace-2 suited, chosen for wheel equity and blocker value. Hands that look playable but bleed. Expected value in position versus 3-bets. First, king-jack offsuit, queen-jack offsuit, and ace-9 offsuit. You get dominated, you lose to barrel lines, and rake compounds the loss. Your 4-bet range in position should mix linear versus polarized ranges depending on villain. Against most blind 3-betters, go more linear for value than add a polarized bluff tail using blockers. First, value 4 bets, pocket queens, and better, ace-king offsuit and ace-king suited. Second, bluff 4 bets, ace-5 suited through ace-2 suited, king-10 suited, selected for blockers and unblockers. TPP exploit framework. First, the exploit versus regulars, who 3-bet wide and c-bet once, call more suited connectors in position and outplay turns. Second, the risk. Overcalling makes you float too much and bleed versus double barrels and larger sizings. Third, the counter. If villain increases turn aggression, reduce marginal calls like 8-7 suited, and increase 4-bet frequency with ace-5 suited through ace-2 suited. Out of position, your calling range must be narrow. Out of position defense is about damage control. Your equity realization, R, drops because you act first, face more barrels, and realize less of your showdown value. Because of that, you cannot defend because MDF, that is hope poker. You must defend with hands that can either 4-bet or call and fight across multiple streets. First, out-of-position calls must have robust playability, not just raw equity. Second, out of position, you prefer hands that can check raise, block value, and do not fold too often to c-bets. Baseline out of position call buckets facing a 3-bet. First, strong pairs. Pocket jacks through pocket 9s more often than pocket 8s through pocket 4s. Second, strong suited broadways. Ace-queen suited, king-queen suited. Third, selective suited connectors, jack-10 suited, 10-9 suited, and fewer combos like 9-8 suited depending on sizing. Hands to cut aggressively out of position versus 3-bets. First, king-jack offsuit and most offsuit broadways. They are dominated and have low R. Second, pocket 4s versus big 3-bets with shallow stacks. Set mining without implied odds is a leak. Out of position, you compensate by 4-betting more. Your 4-bet range should be tighter, more value-dense, and use blocker-driven bluffs. First, value 4 bets. Pocket kings and better, ace-king offsuit, ace-king suited, plus pocket queens at suitable frequencies. Second, bluff. 4 bets, ace, 5 suited through, ace-2 suited, occasional king-queen, suited as a mixed strategy when villain overfolds. This keeps you less capped versus uncapped. If you only call, you enter too many flops with a capped range and no initiative. TPP exploit framework. First, the exploit versus players who 3-bet big and barrel, overfold out of position, and shift marginal continues into folds. Preserve bankroll, expected value. Second, the risk. Overfolding lets a good regular print with any 2 cards, especially in high-volume multi-tabling environments. Third, the counter. If villain responds by 3-betting wider, raise your defense via more 4-bet bluffs with strong blockers and more in position battles where your R is higher. Blockers, unblockers, and 4-bet selection. Blockers and unblockers decide which bluffs survive contact with reality. In 4-bet pots, cards that reduce villain value combos matter more than cards that make pretty post-flop hands. Good blockers reduce pocket aces, pocket kings, ace-king. Good unblockers allow villain to have folds. First, ace-5 suited through ace-2 suited blocks, pocket aces and ace-king, and retains equity when called. Second, king-10 suited blocks pocket kings and ace-king while unblocking many folds in typical polarized 3-bet ranges. Third, 8-7 suited has no relevant blockers. It is usually a call in position, not a 4-bet bluff. Online pool exploit. Many players overfold to 4 bets in the blinds due to multi-tabling. Track it. If their fold to 4-bet is high, you print with blocker bluffs. TPP exploit framework. First, the exploit. Attack high fold to 4-bet stats using ace-5 suited through ace-2 suited and king-10 suited. Keep value range stable. Second, the risk. Overbluffing invites 5-bet jams and calls. Your bluffs burn fast when villain stops folding. Third, the counter. If villain starts defending 4 bets wider, tighten bluff tail and add more post-flop edge hands as calls in position. Hard rules for online expected value. You need rules that survive rake and volume. Your goal is to avoid marginal calls that look fine in theory but lose in practice. First, do not call 3 bets out of position with dominated offsuit broadways like king-jack offsuit. Second, do not set mine pocket fours without stack depth and sizing that gives real implied odds. Third, in position, prioritize hands with playability and nut potential like 8-7 suited and queen-jack suited. Fourth, build 4-bet bluffs around blockers and unblockers, not vibes. Fifth, use tracking software to tag opponents by 3-bet size, fold to 4-bet, and post-flop barrel frequency. TPP Exploit Framework. First, the exploit versus the pool, cut rake-sensitive calls, then repurpose those combos into folds or blocker 4-bets. Second, the risk. Becoming too tight makes you predictable and easy to 3-bet relentlessly. Third, the counter. If targeted, increase 4-bet frequency in position and add traps by calling more. With pocket queens and ace-king suited at mixed frequencies. Scenario box in position defense versus big blind 3-bet. Hero hand, 8 of spades, 7 of spades. Flop. Queen of hearts, 9 of clubs, 4 of spades. Action. Button opens. Big blind 3 bets. Button calls. Big blind C bets. Small. In position, your call pre-flop with 8-7 suited is justified by high equity, realization R, and low domination risk. On this flop, you have a gut shot plus backdoor flush. Your default is to continue versus small C bets with hands that can improve and apply pressure on turns. Folding to 1 small bet here is a volume leak. Do not turn this into hope poker by calling every turn. You need turn plans that attack capped lines and fold to sustained aggression on bricks. Scenario box, out of position defense versus button 3-bet. Hero hand, king of clubs, jack of spades. Flop, ace of hearts, 7 of clubs, 2 of hearts. Action, cutoff opens. Button 3 bets, cutoff calls. Button C bets. Calling out of position with king-jack offsuit preflop is a mistake in typical online pools. Your R is low and your top pairs are dominated. On this flop, you're in a classic capped bluff catcher spot. You fold too often, or you continue and pay multiple streets with weak equity. Your fix is pre-flop. Fold king-jack offsuit more, or 4-bet with better blocker hands when the opponent overfolds. TPP. Key takeaway. When you face a 3-bet, position dictates your defense frequency because it dictates equity realization, R. In position, you can call wider with playable suited hands. Out of position, you must tighten, 4-bet more, and avoid rake-dragged hope calls like king-jack offsuit and thin set mines with pocket fours. Use MDF as a guardrail, keep your range uncapped with 4 bets, and select bluffs using blockers and unblockers. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. What is the main concept the article says should drive your decision when facing a 3-bet, and why does position matter? Answer. Equity realization, R. Position matters because R is higher in position and collapses out of position. Explanation. In position, you realize more of your equity by seeing more streets and controlling pot size, while out of position, you face more pressure and realize less showdown value. Question 2. How does the article define MDF in practice when defending versus 3 bets? Answer. MDF is a guardrail, not a command. Explanation. You use it to avoid overfolding versus aggressive regulars, then adjust with pool reads, rake pressure, and tracking data. Question 3. According to the article, what is the key defense adjustment versus a linear 3-bet range compared to a polarized 3-bet range? Answer. Versus linear, defend medium strength more often, versus polarized. 4-bet more aggressively with blockers and call hands that play well, post-flop. Explanation. Linear ranges attack your whole opening range, so you can't let strong hands print. Polarized ranges contain more bluffs, so blocker-driven 4-bets and playable calls perform better. Question 4. What does the article say is the correct pre-flop fix for calling out of position with dominated offsuit broadways like king-jack offsuit versus a 3-bet? Answer. fold king-jack offsuit more, or 4-bet using better blocker hands when the opponent overfolds. Explanation: out of position. Equity realization is low and top pairs are dominated, creating capped bluff catcher situations that lose expected value across multiple streets. Question 5. In the in-position scenario, button calls big blind 3-bet with 8-7 suited, facing a small c-bet on queen of hearts, 9 of clubs, 4 of spades. What does the article suggest as the default response and why? Answer: continue versus the small c-bet. Explanation: in position, the hand is justified by high R and low domination risk, and on the flop you have improvement paths, gut shot plus backdoor flush, so folding to one small bet is a volume leak. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.